I've been building automations for over 6 years and currently sell Claude Routines to multiple businesses. By the end of this video, you are going to be a Claude Routines expert, ready to integrate this into your personal life and business. We're going to start off by talking about what are Claude Routines and how do they differ from the other platforms out there? What is the anatomy of a routine? How to make a good routine, the limitations, and what routines aren't good for. So let's get into it now. So to start off, a routine is just a task you set up autonomously that runs on its own. So you'll set up a goal in mind. Let's say it's to scrape the web for news, and that'll happen on its own without your device being on. Now, what's the difference between a routine and the other platforms out there like Make, Zapier, and or NAN, Zapier, and Make? And the difference between them is that these tools on the left-hand side are all deterministic, meaning that the input is always going to give you the same output. So step one in this here, the output of step one is the input to step two always. It's always the same. And so that's good because you'll never have confusion from your automation. You expect it to always send you a new lead to your CRM. And that's exactly what it does. It doesn't mess up and send you some random contact information from someone else that I found on the web. So that's deterministic. Input A always equals output B. Whereas Claude Routines are probabilistic. It's based on probability, where you provide it goals and instructions, and then Claude infers the steps to complete the task. So here you see there's many different ways it can get to that. One in this example, there's 3 ways it can get to the task being completed. In reality, there's infinite, but it's based on probability. And the better you prompt the routine, the more we can corral it to get you exactly the task that you want completed. Now, that's the difference between the routines and the other providers. Now, what is the anatomy of a routine? So a routine, just like in many other platforms, NAN, Make, Zapier, they have a trigger. And the trigger can be a schedule. So it can run hourly, daily, weekly. You can either have it to be an API call. So a script can call this programmatically, and then it can have it run. Or it could be a GitHub event. You have this tied to a GitHub repository. And if there is a new pull request, it can actually activate on its own. So those are the 3 triggers. And then the routine, this is where you configure the actual parts of the routine. And the first thing is the prompt. What does it do? In the example of searching news, you would say, I'd like for you to scrape the web on global news. And if you have it tied to a repository where, let's say, you have a bunch of code that helps you scrape the web for news, the routine can grab that and pull it locally. And so here you'll see that it says repository GitHub cloned per run. So these routines are going to run, and you can actually go to each of their runs and talk to them independently in every run. And for every single run that it does, it's going to clone a repository if there is one. So they're all their own isolated environments, separate from one another. And then finally, you set up the connectors and tools in which it can talk to. So in this, we're going to do a Slack connector that is going to be tying to my Slack channel, and it's going to push a message to that. And then the result is whatever you want. In this case, it's going to be a Slack post. You can have it draft a pull request. You can have it just respond a message to you. You can have it create a file. It's pretty endless. So let's jump now over to that. And so now in the main Claude screen, so when you're on the main web page for Claude and you're signed in, you go to home. Now Cowork isn't here anymore. You just have code. So you click on code and you'll see routines. Now we'll select that. And I have 2 routines going. I have one for YouTube. I like that it scrapes YouTube on different AI content creators and kind of see what everyone's up to. And then I also have a daily brief for something else. Now, there's a few ways to make the routines. You can either create a new routine yourself at the top right, or you can just prompt it. So for example, if I were to say, I want to get a daily news brief on the world news. And then if you click on draft routine, it's going to name it and give you all the instructions. And these instructions are actually uh, written in a way that Anthropic actually wants you to create the routines. And we'll get a little bit more to that later on in the video, but it's written very well. So the name is Daily World News Brief. Compile a brief summary of world news from the past 24 hours. And it has steps. So you can think of these steps as like an SOP, a standard operating procedure. And that's normally how you want to prompt these routines. So it's going to identify 5 to 8 significant stories. For each story, write 2 to sentence summary, organized by region. If there are no major stories to report, note that briefly. And we'll see here that it says, what model do I want to use? For most models, you can get by just running Sonnet 5. If you're feeling fancy, you can run Opus 5. I think anything that uses Fable 5 is overkill. So I'll do Opus 5. On the left-hand side is where you can select a repository where this routine will pull files from. So if I had anything that can support me in this development, I can pull from one of the GitHub repositories. In this case, I have nothing that can help me with this, so I won't do that. And then on the right-hand side, you have environments. Now, environments are where you're going to set consistent parameters for the environment, the sandbox, for this routine to run in. So if I were to add an environment, and let's call it world news, and let's say I'm going to make 8 other routines that all pull from different countries independently, France, Italy, South America, Thailand, all these places, I can then use all the routines in this one environment. So first, it's going to say network access, and it says trusted is the recommended. But I typically run full unrestricted because it won't run into any hiccups when it's trying to search the web. Now, their disclaimer, it's risky. You can run into prompt injections and it can ruin your routine. But I normally run full so that I can just run it the way I want to. Now, environment variables, if you want it to reach out to third-party APIs and you need an API key, this is where you will set the environment variables, and it's something we're going to do further on in the video. And then a setup script. This is always going to run once a new routine is instantiated. So when the routine starts and it creates a new run, this setup script is always going to begin. Now, you can have it do anything. The most recent thing I had it do was override the local settings JSON file to have like more permissions than what you normally get. And I did that using this setup script. So we'll do create environment. And now you'll see world news is here. And now every time I make 6 other routines, I'll see this here and I can choose between default or world news. And then for the trigger, we have right now it's on a daily 10 a.m. You can do hourly once, weekdays, weekly, custom, and set it up using Cron. If you don't know how to write this, just ask Claude, hey, give me one that I want to run every 7 hours or something like that. And it'll create this for you and just paste it in. So we can do daily. You can also add multiple triggers like a GitHub event or an API. And we can do API in a little bit. We'll get to that. But right now we'll just do the cron trigger. And then now you have connectors. Now these are the tools in which you're going to allow it to do something. And so here it selects them all by default, but you can add a connector or you can remove them. Now I would say my recommendation is to scope this aggressively, like very fine-tuned scope. If you only need Slack, give it only Slack. Don't give it the reins to the kingdom because then it can really, you increase its probability to make a mistake. So now I will create this. And now you see it's going to run daily at 10 a.m. or I can force the run now. So I'm going to run it. And then at the bottom right, you see we now have a new thing that came up under runs. And this one's manual. And so scheduled has none yet. Manual, you can delineate and see, how did you instantiate the run? But I'll do all and you can click into it. It's like I'm going to gather the current news from the past 24 hours. And now it's going to search the web. You can also talk to it in here and actually tell it, I didn't like that you pulled only from South America. Please pull from other countries. And it'll go ahead and do that. So the routine finished and now it's talking about multiple news across the world, Middle East, Europe, Africa, Asia. And then it also tells you the sources it came from. So now this is cool, but let's say I don't want to actually be inside Claude Code to always have to get this to run. I just want this. I actually want it to run on its own. And I also maybe in the middle of the day want to ask it to run a specific news on a country. So we'll go back to routines. And here it says Daily World's news brief. I will click on that. And now we see that this was ran successfully today. But I'm going to edit the routine. And this time, I'm going to add another trigger. And I'm going to do an API trigger. And here what it's going to give us is a fire URL. And this is going to be the URL that your script, your web app, your third-party application is going to post to. And this is the token it's going to use to post to it. Now you're going to need this token because you won't be able to actually write to this URL if you don't have the token. Now, why do tokens even exist? Well, if I gave this out to hundreds of people, now everybody can write to it, and that's very dangerous. So you're going to copy the URL. I have Claude Code open, and I'm going to paste it. Let me bring this over here. So I'm going to grab the trigger. I'm going to paste it in the .env file, routine trigger ID. And this is just to make it very easy to Claude Code to use it. Then I'm going to generate the token. It says copy it now because it won't show it again. So copied it. Okay. I'm going to bring this back. So I'm going to open a new session. I'm going to save this environment variable where I just added the secret key and the routine trigger ID from the fire URL. And then I'm going to tell Claude to run it. Can you run the routine? And in the body text, write, please look up information about Australia. So now what did I do here? Every time you make a call to a routine programmatically, you can actually send information through a body field. Now, the body field is just plain text. So if you're thinking you can send structured JSON or anything like that, it won't work. It actually will just flatten it. It says, I use the schedule skill to run your routine, incorporating the Australia lookup into the body text. So it's going to do a remote trigger, status 200. So I would think that is good to go. So now we have this active, we have regenerate, and it also gives you an example request. You can just copy this and paste it into Claude Code and get it to do something for you. Back out of this, we're going to jump back in, and now we see it is running at 11:55. And now it's going to search across several areas, and we'll be back when it's done. And so as I was running it, I realized it still said manual. And it's because Claude Code, when I asked it earlier, it misunderstood me and said, oh, you wanted me to update your prompt. And it updated it automatically and then ran it manually. That's not what I wanted. So I wanted it to run the API, and I said, hey, you updated it manually. Please run it via the API. And that's exactly what it did. So it initialized the session, and it's gathering current news. And so here, now you notice this is denoted by the API. And both of these runs are happening in tandem, or not in tandem, in parallel at the same time. So the API call, when we spoke to it earlier, we said, hey, can you find things about Australia? And when I went to the initial part of this run, it says routine fire payload. And then it says the following was supplied by the caller of this routine's API fire endpoint. And it says, please look up information about Australia, include it in the brief. So it did exactly what we wanted. And then it's going to finish and we'll be good to go. While those run, now let's go over and create a new routine and connect it to a Slack connector. Now this routine, I'm not going to instantiate here. I'm going to show you how to do it the other way, which is via the new routine button. So I'm going to call this stock market analysis. And as far as a good prompt goes, what we need to do is talk a little bit about what makes a good prompt. So, the anatomy of a prompt, you really want it to be something that gets it to finish very well. So, context is optional. In this case, we're going to be pulling stock market data on specific stocks. And the context, you can tell it you are a market data reporter running on a schedule. You want to provide it the source. So in this case, we're going to be telling it read an environment variable for us because that's what you're going to use to complete the task. And then you lay out the concrete steps, the SOP really, and then you define the output, the destination. In this case, we're going to be telling it, hey, send one Slack DM to me in a specific format. And then we define what done is: post once, then stop. Do not edit files, open PRs, or take any other actions. And then if we like, we can handle edge cases. So if you hit rate limiting on your third-party APIs, then it needs to know how to handle that. And the more you handle those edge cases, it's going to behave the way you want it to. So in this case, if a note or information rate limit appears or data is missing, just DM me saying that there's no data this run. So let's jump back and let's tell it you are a market data analyst and you run on a schedule. Cool. Step 1, I want you to read and get the API key from our environment variables called, and then I'm just going to call it API key. Step 2, fetch our stock's latest historical data from the following endpoint. And then we'll define the endpoint there. Step 3, send exactly one Slack message to me using our Slack connector in the following format. And then I'll outline exactly what I want it to send me. So let's first grab our API key. So this is Alpha Vantage, where you can just kind of like grab historical stock data, and it's super easy to get an API key. So you can just go to this API -key endpoint. You go to, I'm just going to write investor, organization, and then my email. And then I'm going to get the free API key, which is right here. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to jump back to Claude Code. And then I'm going to go to the environment. Now, remember, we have our world news environment. I'm going to make another one just for the sake of it. Full. And then here, I'm going to write API key. I'm going to put that. And then why can I not make the environment? Let's see here. Oh, didn't even name it. Stock data. Cool. So now we got stock data and we have our API key set. Just to double check, that is API_key. And if I go to stock data and I want to edit, it says API_key. Cool. So we got it lined up how we want to, but now we need to call the appropriate endpoint. And this is now their documentation. And on the left-hand side, I see the S&P 500. We can do that one. And it says weekly open, high, low, close, time series for the S&P 500. Cool. I'm going to copy this. And it has the API key at the end. And we're going to go back here, paste that in, but we're going to replace this API key at the end that it says demo with the actual API key. Now, step 3, I want it to send me exactly one Slack message in the following format. Now, I don't actually know what this outputs, but it says if I click, I'll get a JSON output. So here we have name, interval, and data. So I think I'm going to do name and then date and then high and low. Let's do that. So I'm going to come in here and say symbol. I'm putting in curly braces. And symbol is just that. We're going to jump back. Cool. Then I'm going to do date. We're going to do the same thing. What's the date here? That's the date. And high. I'm going to do it again for low. And I think I already kind of know the naming convention of this. So now I anticipate when we send this off, it's going to grab the symbol, the date, high, and low, which is exactly what I want. And I'm going to use Sonnet 4.6. I want to say I have everything I need. And I'm going to run this on a schedule. And once again, I'm going to get rid of all these connectors because it should not have access to all of these. It only needs Slack. Cool. Step 1, step 2, step 3. We gave it. Now we need to define what done should look like. Done condition, : after sending one DM to my Slack channel. That's what done looks like. Cool. And then I'll avoid edge cases for now. Create. And then now we can run it. So it's setting up a cloud container. And if you were to actually open that, you can see it saying up. It's setting up the cloud container, copying a repository, and running a setup script, which we didn't run. And then it's going to run Claude Code. So it finished, but apparently this was a premium endpoint and we aren't able to use it. And I'm not going to pay for it. So let's find another one. Let's do monthly. Let's do the same thing we just did. Perfect. Gonna grab this. We're gonna go back to Claude Code. Stock market analysis. I'm gonna edit, and then we're gonna jump in here and change this endpoint. API key. Now, the symbol is actually IBM here, so we got that, but I don't actually know what the endpoint resolves to or what the call actually returns. So I'm going to check. So we got symbol, which is the same. Last refreshed is a different time. So I'm going to grab last refresh. I'm going to put date. It's going to give me the date. And then high and low is the same. So cool. All right. So let's now run this version. New prompt is going to run our new endpoint. So you can see that you can actually have like different variations of your prompt through your runs in the same routine. So you're saying task completed, fetch IBM's latest monthly data from Alpha Vantage and sent the DM to Slack, symbol IBM date 2020. All right, cool. And then if I jump over to Slack, you can see here that it sent that information over. So that's how we can integrate third-party APIs into it, and you can do it safely, keeping your environment variable safe by creating an environment and placing them in there. Now let's talk about how much this will cost you. And there are limits to routines. So the Pro plan currently lets you run 5 routines a day. The Max plan lets you run 15 routines a day. The team plan is 25 routines per day, and then the enterprise plan is the same. This also is only the limits of routines. You are still going through and using your plan's usage. So if you're running Opus, you are still eating up into that allotted subscription amount for your Opus model. Same with Fable 5 and same with all the other models. So you need to be wary of that. Now, what are routines not good for? So routines are very similar to Cowork. They're scheduled tasks. The routine is probabilistic, just like Cowork is. But routines are best for code and repo development. So if you have a GitHub repository and a pull request comes in, you can have a routine run, analyze it all, make sure it's good, and merge it. That's what it's good for. Although here we show different use cases. Cowork is better for documents and knowledge work. So if you have a bunch of files on your computer and you want to synthesize all that and respond to an email and post it onto a website or whatever, Cowork is better for that. The issue with Cowork is that you need your laptop running. Up until like 2 days ago, they just added a capability for Cowork tasks to be done in the cloud. So that's in beta. But historically, Cowork was never allowed for you to just run it in the cloud. You needed your laptop on, and there was a feature for it called always on, and it kept your laptop running. Now, the triggers, you have scheduled API and GitHub event like we showed. The triggers are the same for the scheduled tasks except the GitHub event, and it runs off of Anthropic's cloud. Your laptop can be off. Cowork just had the same capability done where you can actually have it on Anthropic's cloud. And then NAN, Zap, and Maker, as we just spoke about, are deterministic. Now, routines are very easy to set up. They're quick. You're just talking to the model like you normally would, and it'll let you connect to multiple different sources, datas, and with a little bit of technical skill set, you can use it to actually improve your business in like endless ways. NAN has a higher learning curve. That's why I would shy away from it if you are new to all of this. If you want me to go over Cowork next, that's actually something I have in the works. Drop a comment. Let me know what you guys want to see.